You're listening to Retro Reels, a show that looks back on films from time gone by and recalls the various events, trends, and perspectives that inform their creation. I'm your host, Hanna, here to guide you through a trip to the past via the silver screen. For the last episode of the Women's Director series, I have watched two movies by American director Kelly Reichardt. Reichardt was born in Miami to a narcotics agent mother and a crime scene technician father, must have met on the job, I guess, and became interested in photography as a child, playing around with her father's crime scene camera. Her first movie, River of Grass, came out in 1994, but it would be about 10 years before she could get another feature film made due to a lack of funds. She suspected a large contributing factor to this was that she was a woman. No big surprise there, glass ceiling and all that. So she made a few short films instead. And through director Todd Haynes, whom I know for his 1995 film Safe, starring Julianne Moore, she met writer John Raymond and producer Neil Kopp. Raymond helped her write a few of her films and Kopp produced them. John Raymond lives in Portland and primarily writes novels and short stories based in the Pacific Northwest, which is why, despite the fact she's originally from Florida, literally the complete opposite end of the United States compared to that region, both of the films I watched from her this week are based in Oregon. Reichardt and Raymond co-wrote screenplay adaptations of 3 of his works so far, 2 of which I watched for this episode. The first, Old Joy, which came out in 2006, and the second, Wendy and Lucy, which came out in 2008, were actually recommended to me by my husband/invisible co-host when I expressed to him last month what a hard time I was having putting together a month's worth of programs on movies made by women. They're both quite short, about an hour and a half each, and the storylines are pretty simple. Technically, this qualifies as slow cinema, but the shorter runtime makes it feel a lot faster compared to something like, say, Chantal Akerman's 3.5-hour Beast, Jean Dielman, 23 Commerce Quay, 1080 Brussels. Reichardt is one of those women in male-dominated fields who really doesn't want to call attention to the fact that she's a woman in a male-dominated field. She has rejected the label of feminist filmmaker and also bristles at being called a woman director. All right, I'm gonna try my best to articulate why this puts me off. So this position is perfectly understandable for artists who don't want their work reduced to their identity. I certainly don't. Who does? You want to be judged for you. It's maddening to see white men get the default treatment, meanwhile you are always pigeonholed into a certain category. That said, I just think it's kind of unrealistic, given the genuine minority of female directors out there. I mean, look how hard it was for me to put a list of woman-made movies together for this month. Granted, I'm limited to older movies, and the further back you go in any field, the harder it's going to be to find women, but even so, the pickings are very, very slim in the realm of cinema. I guess it puts me off a bit because, in this field at least, it's just not time yet to try to shake off the woman descriptor like it's a dirty word. I bet if Reichardt knew I was deliberately including her in a Women's History Month series of programs, she'd just be angry she wasn't categorized in some other way, alongside other slow cinema directors, perhaps. I mean, yeah, sure, I would gladly place her among them. In fact, I enjoyed her movies more than the works of some other slow cinema filmmakers I've seen so far. But I also think it's well worth highlighting her movies for the simple fact that a woman made them. Of course, we all aspire to be above identity politics, but for now, it's still true that simply by being a woman who makes films, you are engaging in a feminist act because it's just not normalized enough yet. To me, her rejection of these labels reads like a touch of denial. Not like she wants to become a man or anything, but like she's trying to lean away from being a woman. Your work can be bigger than your labels, but in the end, the labels still apply because your experience shapes your art. So Sorry, Kelly, I get it. I really do. But you're always going to be one of the girls, and you're all the better for that, whether you realize it or not. So all month long, I've been playing songs by Portishead for my episode interludes, which has felt very on theme, considering the lyrical content, and they're up there with some of my favorite musical artists. But this week, it'll be a bit different, because the band Yo La Tengo actually did the soundtrack for Old Joy. While I couldn't grab the soundtrack itself, I did find a couple of songs by the band that felt right to include.
I don't care if Monday's blue, Tuesday's gray and Wednesday too. Thursday, I don't care about you. It's Friday, I'm in love. Monday, you can fall apart. Tuesday, Wednesday, break my heart. Thursday doesn't even start. It's Friday, I'm in love. Saturday, wait. Sunday always comes too late. Friday, never hesitate. I don't care if Monday's black. Tuesday, Wednesday, heart attack. Thursday, never looking back. It's Friday, I'm in love.
Old Joy is based on a short story of the same name, written by Raymond from his collection Livability. The story features two old friends, Kurt and Mark, who take a spur-of-the-moment weekend trip into the Oregon Cascades to find a natural hot spring. Kurt is kind of a hippie, drifter sort of guy, while Mark has chosen a more conventional path in life and is going to become a father soon. Not much actually happens in the film. Basically, they drive out, they get kind of lost, eventually find the springs, and then drive home. What takes place is really not as important as bearing witness to the awkward dynamic of two people who used to be close, but whose paths have since diverged such that they can't quite connect on the level they used to anymore. The main thing you're meant to experience is the feeling of reaching out and not quite making contact that pervades their interactions. It really struck me how strongly this film was a product of and encapsulated the mid to late 2000s era in the United States. Life speeds up significantly when you finish your schooling and start working, then speeds up even faster when you start a family. It ceases to exist in those stressful, agonizing school quarter or semester-long cycles. The years feel so slow when you're a kid. The texture of them has a chance to really settle into your memory. For me, the aughts was that time. That's compared to the 2010s, the time I was between the ages of 20-30, which felt only half as long and left half as many lasting impressions on me. And now, the 2020s are almost half over, and I can hardly remember a single thing that happened, apart from the COVID pandemic and the birth of my son. So as I watched Old Joy, I found myself thinking, it couldn't have been that long ago. I remember how the world felt, how those cars smelled, what the streetlights looked like, the American countryside's vast silence, its greens, browns, and grays, its gaping skies. I remember just looking out the window during long drives, before smartphones or similar devices, before Google Maps or other forms of GPS, when you could actually get lost if you didn't know the way. And Kurt and Mark do get lost, and they don't make it to their destination until they get some clarification from a waitress at a local diner. There's nothing more American, I think, than a road movie, which is fundamentally what Old Joy is. And the second most American thing is this narrative about friendship, about growing up and growing apart. Actually, that's not even really unique to America. It happens to almost all of us at some point. Honestly, it's not fair that it's back when the years feel so slow, when you're young and not fully the person you're going to be yet, that it's also the most impactful time in your life to make friends. The neighbor's kids, your classmates, the people you meet in college. There's a point when you're both traveling the same path, that you can become so tight with someone. But then afterwards, when you go your separate ways, it unpleasantly surprises you just how strange you can become to one another. Some readings of this film interpret Mark and Kurt's relationship as repressed homosexual desire, because when he gives up on trying to connect verbally, Kurt gives Mark an affectionate shoulder massage at the hot spring. But this reading completely sidesteps what I think Reichardt is really challenging us to see, and that's that men can and should have intimacy among themselves as friends. In fact, I think interpreting their relationship as gay is cheap. It's the kind of reading that sounds progressive, but actually just shows how strictly you categorize acceptable behaviors according to gender. Women touch one another in affectionate but non-sexual ways, and people don't immediately assume they're gay, so why not men? Especially these sensitive hipster sorts of guys that Mark and Kurt are. It's not like them being a bit cuddlier than the average dude is beyond any stretch of the imagination. I have a little bit less to say about Wendy and Lucy, which I still enjoyed, just not quite as much as Old Joy. This is a movie about the casual cruelty of circumstance, something I thankfully know less about than I do estranged friendships. It stars Michelle Williams, who was most famously Alma in Brokeback Mountain, at least most famously to me, as a homeless woman trying to get to Alaska from Indiana, whose car breaks down in Nowheresville, Oregon. Her only companion, a dog named Lucy, is lost when Wendy is taken into police custody for attempting to shoplift dog food. A security guard working at the town's Walgreens helps her get in touch with the local pound, who eventually figure out and inform Wendy that Lucy was rehomed the same day she was brought in. Unfortunately, Wendy learns that her car is unfixable. She ends up abandoning it, bidding farewell to Lucy, and hopping onto a northbound freight train. Both of these stories offer a painfully honest and fleeting glimpse at a little piece of the way people really live. Both also end pretty ambiguously. If you can say they end at all, it feels more like a drive-by. Wendy and Lucy is better about it. There was more of a sense of wrapping up, of finality. She's lost her dog and her car, and we have no idea what's next, but at least she's on her way out of that dead-end town, even if her future doesn't exactly look optimistic. It's also bookended by the same sounds and images of Wendy humming some nameless, melancholy tune, of freight trains containing who knows what, going who knows where. On the other hand, Old Joy ends really abruptly, with just a brief shot of Kurt wandering the streets of Portland with nowhere to go, that it kind of bewildered me. I'm not sure how I would have preferred to see Old Joy end, but I know I didn't prefer to see it end like that. In either case, though, it's really enjoyable to see Reichardt's work with the camera, particularly her shots of nature, of what it's like to ride around in an old car on America's back roads, of its little nothing towns populated by its few familiar characters, by turns endearing and by turns grating. And Lucy the dog is featured in both films as well, a perfect golden brown mutt with floppy ears and a perfect sweetie face. Lucy was Reichardt's dog, surely long gone by now, but immortalized in her movies. Such is the luxury of directorial choice. It's my movie, so I get to put my dog in it. If I ever get to make a movie, I'd probably do the same.
Did you hear that lonesome whippoorwill? He sounds too blue to fly. That midnight train rides alone. I'm so lonesome I could cry. Did you ever see a night so long when time goes crawling by? The moon just went behind the cloud. I'm so lonesome I could cry.
I wasn't able to pick up any of John Raymond's short story collections to read the originals for myself before watching these adaptations, but my brief research about them reminded me of how I used to care a lot about the American short story. Actually, my undergraduate thesis was on the works of Flannery O'Connor and Eudora Welty. It's one of the few literary forms that the United States can stake a claim to. It wasn't invented in America, but it was definitely refined there. It's up there with the essay, for me, another short literary form that must successfully compress its message in the most eloquent and impactful way possible. That's what I like about it. There's no wandering in the short story or the essay, as there typically is in, say, the novel. The writer has to control it tightly, select its content right down to the word choice with great prejudice. They both require a lot of discipline and economy to pull off, and when they do, they deliver a cogent message. It's just the story is content to show it, while the essay must, by the nature of its format, present an argument for it. But both can be rich, lyrical, interesting, informative. Some of the most thought-provoking works in the English language come in small packages. Somehow, as the last decade flew past me, I kind of forgot about these things. It goes back to what I said about the aughts. Those years don't seem that long ago, but that's because I was a kid and life was slow. Back when a lot of my world was just reading, and I could get excited about something as simple as a perfectly rendered metaphor or an ingenious turn of phrase. Amid all the various life events of the last 15 or so years, though, I guess I kind of lost that piece of myself. I think the short story can, in some cases, adapt to film quite well, given how important it is in both forms to keep things pretty condensed. I might never make a movie in this lifetime, but I think I could be the John Raymond to someone's Kelly Reichardt. Who knows? If I can find my way back to who I was before all this happened, then maybe the short story could be my path into screenwriting. For now, though, I'll keep having my fun on the radio. That's all I have for you guys today. I'm Hanna Belinsky. Thank you for tuning in to Retro Reels, and I hope you'll join me again next time on another look back on the way things were.